You guys remember that one time Nintendo banned a Pokemon game? If you hadn't guessed already, today's video is about Pokemon Uranium, a fan game that was banned by Nintendo back in 2016. If you don't know the story, it basically goes Pokemon Uranium was one of the most well-known fan games a few years back. This game featured its own niche in nuclear-typed Pokemon that were affected by uranium, changing into a new 19th type, and had Fakemon to boot. This game got so popular that Nintendo sent a cease and desist which forced the developers to remove the download link to finish the game and stop production on any future updates. Now, normally that would be where the story ends, but one question remained from the situation. Why? There are many fan games and ROM hacks for Pokemon at the time. Why target Pokemon Uranium? The truth is that Nintendo probably wanted to make an example out of Uranium, deterring any more production of free-to-play Pokemon games. While it's not the only game to be effectively shut down by Nintendo, Pokemon Prism being another notable example, I wanted to take a look back at what once was. With the full game being leaked, quote-unquote online, I wanted to examine the game and see what makes it great. With that being said, these are my thoughts on the game Nintendo doesn't want you knowing about, Pokemon Uranium. Now, the most prominent feature in this game would be the new Fakemon present. The Pokédex, while being short, brings in over 160 unique species exclusive to this game, as well as additional evolutions to prior existing ones. Remember how Pokemon like Primate, Dunsparce, and Corsola all got long overdue evolutions in Gen 8 and 9? Well, this game did that years earlier. But doesn't end there. In recognition of the game's name, it adds an entirely new type, Nuclear. Pokemon exposed to high levels of gamma radiation to the point of having their personalities and biologies changed. Essentially, all these Pokemon just get Hulk boosted. But what makes them unique is that they're both weak against every type and strong against every type, excluding Steel. Depending on the circumstances, they could be really easy to deal with, or they could end your entire career in seconds. This complexity in their use cases made it fun to utilize some of them on my team. Because any Pokemon could be a nuclear type, you really have to make note of type matchups. It goes a step forward when you realize some of the nuclears can Mega Evolve. Like imagine this, Mega Nuclear Gyarados. That sounds insane to use and really drives home the fact that you're carrying the equivalent of a bomb inside your pocket. There's also a Wonder Trait system that surprisingly still works. Got my hand on the base form of some endgame Pokemon, it was great. Now, as a whole, how you feel about the Fakemon could really make or break your enjoyment of the game. In my mind, Fakemon are fine as long as they're trying something new we haven't seen before. New type combinations, new inspirations, stuff like that. If a Fakemon exists solely to be a bootleg version of the main series species, that's when it gets egregious. For the most part, the game avoids that. There was just one instance where the game had a Ditto clone, so the quality of the Fakemon may vary. One compliment I will give the game, however, is that they know how to utilize its world. There was one point in the game where you're climbing up a mountain, and there's barely any healing spots on the trek up. So you're really going through your items just to survive and not be sent all the way back down. Additionally, there's no Elite Four in this game, meaning that the Pokemon League functions similarly to the anime. Full matches with trainers who've collected all the gym badges. This is something I wish Sword and Shield would have done. Yeah, we got to battle the gym leaders, but it would have been nice to fight people that weren't our rivals, but were serious competitors as well. And the last thing I'll mention is that you can really only enjoy the game if you remember that it was made around Gen 6. Many concepts this game uses have since been incorporated into the core series, such as type combinations and story beats. You'll have to remind yourself that this game did specific elements first, otherwise you'll enter into the mindset that you're playing a bootleg. Now let's take a look at the story. At first the game plays out very generically. You and your douche rival go around the Tandor region to collect 8 gym badges. You know how this plays out, so I'll just touch up on the interesting stuff. The player's mother, Lucille, is a part of a group of scientists trying to create an artificial Pokemon that could act as a source of unlimited energy. The creation and experimentation of new Pokemon is highly illegal in this world, so when the international police start investigating the nuclear power plant housing the fan-made Pokemon Urayne, the head scientist, Dr. Larkspur, initiated a termination sequence to get rid of any incriminating evidence. In the lead up to this, Lucille had invented the CURIE interface, which allowed her to speak to Urayne, the man-made Pokemon. Urayne couldn't survive outside his stasis tank without nuclear fuel, so Lucille made a judgment call and locked herself inside the stasis pods with Urayne, using the CURIE interface to speak with them and keep them company. While the stasis pod survived the explosion, Lucille had been trapped under the rubble for 10 years, as that area had essentially become Chernobyl. The CURIE interface had warped her mind, turning her insane, and she forgot all about her children, her husband, and only prioritized her survival of Urayne. From here, Lucille adopted the moniker CURIE and started attacking the power plants around the region to ensure Urayne's survival. And as a result, the radioactive energy transformed nearby wild Pokemon into nuclear types. Then from there, at the end of the game, you would face CURIE and Apocalypse for Urayne, which is essentially Ultra Necrozma / Eternamax Eternatus at the Pokemon League. From here, the player would learn what really happened to their mother, that the CURIE interface had overloaded Lucille's mind and sent her into a coma. Luckily for Urayne, the legendary Pokemon Acton, who's also Heatran's brother apparently, gave Urayne a fuel source that'll help her survive without uranium. While that's a brief overview of the game's main plot, I found that it handled itself well. It wasn't the stereotypical villain team trying to take over the region, as CURIE / Lucille were acting on their own. With CURIE, they did a great job with depicting her as insane. For one, not recognizing and subsequently attacking her own child, and two, trying to start a nuclear winter to ensure Urayne's survival. Her whole story is tragic, as she genuinely was a good person trying to make Urayne feel loved, but then tragedy struck and turned her into a semi-wholesome joker. I guess is the best way I could describe that. Even if she did wake up from her coma, she would be charged for her crimes and ripped away from her family once more. And that really strikes home the tragedy that she's never going to be a part of her family again. Moving on, the plotline with Urayne didn't come much into play until the end of the game, and interrupting the champion match Chairman Rose style was annoying, but I think the slight alterations to the formula stopped the plot from being too stale. Now before we end the video, I wanted to quickly touch upon the characters and their roles in the story. Starting off with Theo. The game does a good job with depicting him as a kid. He's annoying, entitled, difficult for no reason, and doesn't think about the consequences of his actions. While not the ideal rival at first, his personality was realistic for a 12-year-old and left room for growth. What I like about the guy is that you can actually see him grow into a more mature person. He stops complaining about losing and starts to reflect on what he could have done better. He also treats the player more of a friend as time goes on, instead of someone he hates for no reason. I think the greatest aspect of his development arc is his design change around the 7th gym. By this point, his fathers went missing due to the battle against nuclear Pokemon, so he tries to push himself to be more mature like his dad would have wanted him to be. With Theo, there's a lot of introspection, as for some of us, we see ourselves in him. Watching him grow, mature, and gain respect is something you feel proud of him for. How well his growth is handled in a way exceeds the core series characters like Hop or How. His character arc was magnificent and easily became my favorite character the game had to offer. The last character worth mentioning outside of Lucille / CURIE would be the player's father, Kellen. Kellen acts as the head of the Pokemon Rangers after the supposed death of his wife. The grief caused by Lucille's death pushed him to focus on his work. His busy job kept him away from the player, but after the player embarked on their journey, Kellen tries to reconnect with them. The storyline with him trying to do right by his child and involve them in his work is sweet. The game does a good job at showing you how he's trying to redeem himself to his child, while also not being overbearing and force a relationship. With most Pokedads not being around, I like how Kellen at least tries to do right by his child, unlike a certain duo of robots I know. Now my final thoughts on Pokemon Uranium. Lucille's disappearance sending Kellen into a spiral of grief, and the disappearance of Theo's father serving as a catalyst for his development being some examples. An unfortunate event tore apart the player's family and destined the player to deal with the fallout. It's easy to empathize with the situation, as I imagine many of us have lost loved ones from situations beyond our control. While the whole main antagonist being your family cliche isn't anything new, the game is respectful to its characters and their storylines, and it's a cliche I never thought would be used in a Pokemon game. I love the emphasis on the main cast and the main message being to cherish your loved ones. Having said that, the post-game is still unfinished, and due to the cease and desist from Nintendo, it most likely never will. But for what the game had, it was really enjoyable. Pokemon Uranium isn't the most difficult, nor the most unique, but it does its job effectively, and the entire experience is really enjoyable. If I hadn't known better, I think this was an official Pokemon game. It's that good. But that's all I have to say on it. I hope you all enjoyed my look back on Pokemon Uranium. What are your thoughts on the game? Leave it in the comment section down below. I didn't mention it yet, but some of the developers moved on to a new project called Pokemon Flux, which features some of the Fakemon from this game. Flux seems like the spiritual successor for Uranium, so I might give it a try. But that's all I'll say on it. Hope you all enjoyed. Peace.